Have you ever felt like you're fighting a losing battle against your own habits, no matter how hard you try to change? What if I told you that the part of your brain you think is in charge is actually doing almost nothing compared to the giant hidden beneath the surface? Welcome back to Relax Silentra, and if you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button right now. It honestly feels a bit unfair once you realize how your subconscious mind really works. Most people spend their entire lives grinding away, trying to force change through pure willpower. They hit the same walls and the same fears over and over again, never realizing they are using the wrong tool for the job. But while they're struggling, there's a second mind running everything in the background. It's 11 million times more powerful than your conscious thoughts, and it's been running programs installed decades ago by people who didn't even ask for your permission. This video is all about taking those controls back into your own hands. We aren't talking about years of sitting on a therapy couch, though that has its place. And we aren't talking about forcing yourself to think positive thoughts that disappear the moment life gets messy. This is something much more direct. We are going to look at exactly how your subconscious receives information, how it stores it, and how it acts on it without you even knowing. Once you understand the mechanics, you can start feeding it something new on purpose. But here's the crazy part. Every single chapter we go through will dive deeper into the actual science of how this reprogramming works. You're going to see why willpower almost always fails and why the right kind of repetition is the real secret to success. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part of this journey. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. There are specific times during your day when your subconscious is wide open to new instructions. If you learn how to speak its language, the change you want won't be a struggle anymore. It will just become who you naturally are. Chapter 1. The Mind Beneath the Mind. You have to understand that you aren't just one mind, you're actually two minds running at the same time. One of them does all the heavy lifting but gets almost none of the credit. Your conscious mind, the part of you listening to these words right now, only processes about 40 bits of information every second. That sounds like a lot, until you realize your subconscious is processing 11 million bits per second. The gap is massive. Your conscious mind thinks it's the boss, but it's really only seeing a tiny slice of what's actually happening in your body and your world. You won't believe how much your subconscious is actually doing for you right now. It isn't just an assistant. It's the entire engine of your life. Your conscious mind is basically just a passenger along for the ride, telling itself a story about being the driver. While you're thinking about what to eat for dinner, your subconscious is busy regulating your heartbeat, managing your digestion, and handling your immune system. It makes thousands of tiny adjustments every single minute just to keep you breathing and alive. It's also the ultimate storage unit, holding on to every memory you've ever had, even the ones you can't recall on purpose. It runs all those automatic programs that create your habits, your gut reactions, and the deep beliefs that color how you see the world. Think about when you drive a familiar route and suddenly realize you've arrived without remembering the turns you took. That was your subconscious driving, while your conscious mind was daydreaming. This same autopilot is running your relationships, your money decisions, and even your sense of what you deserve. Did you know your brain is actually split into two very different types of workers? Scientists call this explicit and implicit processing. Explicit processing is the slow, hard work your brain does when you're really focusing on something. It's what you use when you're trying to solve a tough math problem or learn a brand new skill for the very first time. On the other hand, implicit processing is fast, automatic, and happens completely behind the scenes without you even trying. Think about things like typing on a keyboard or riding a bike. Research shows that once you've practiced these behaviors enough, your brain literally switches gears. It moves the task from the conscious part of your mind to a totally different set of neural circuits. If you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button. It really helps the channel out. But here's the crazy part. This same switch happens with your deepest beliefs and how you handle your emotions. What starts as a lesson you consciously learned as a child eventually turns into an automatic program that runs on its own without you ever deciding to turn it on. This is exactly why willpower usually fails to make big changes in your life. Willpower is just a tool for the conscious mind, but you're trying to use it to fix a subconscious problem. Your conscious mind can fight a craving for a few minutes if you try really hard, but it simply cannot outlast a program that's been running for 20 years. Why? Because the subconscious never gets tired the way your conscious effort does. Plus, the math is totally stacked against you. Your subconscious processes 11 million bits of information every single second, while your conscious mind only handles about 40. It's not even a fair fight. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Understanding that this isn't a fair fight is actually the first step to stopping the struggle. Instead of fighting, you have to learn how to talk to your subconscious on its own terms, using methods that actually work. You see, the subconscious doesn't care about logic the way your normal thoughts do. It doesn't look at facts, weigh pros and cons, or change its mind just because you have a good argument. Before we dive into how to actually speak its language, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part of this series. The subconscious only responds to 3 specific things: repetition, intense emotion, and vivid sensory details. This is why one scary or painful event from when you were little can create a belief that sticks with you for decades, even if you have plenty of proof as an adult that it's not true. Your subconscious saved that original memory with a ton of emotional weight, and emotion is the only currency it deals in. Once you realize this, it changes everything about how you try to reprogram your brain. It shows you that arguing with yourself is just using the wrong language to talk to the part of you that's actually in charge. It's almost scary when you think about it. If your subconscious is doing 11 million things a second without you watching, it means it's been writing your life story without your permission, based on rules you learned before you were even old enough to think for yourself. But wait until you hear this. That fear is actually a good thing. It's the moment you realize how much power has been sitting there, just waiting for you to take the wheel. The same engine that's been running those old broken programs is available to run new ones with your full participation once you learn how to make it listen. And it turns out the secret isn't a mystery at all, even if our culture ignores it. The subconscious listens best When you are in a state of relaxed focus, which part of your autopilot has been the hardest for you to change? Drop it in the comments below. Once your logical, analytical mind finally steps aside and stops trying to filter or argue with every piece of new information, it starts to listen to repetition. It does this because repeated patterns are the only way your brain can tell the difference between a meaningful signal and just random background noise. It also pays close attention to real, raw emotion because feelings act like a highlighter, showing your brain what matters enough to be saved in your permanent memory. Your mind also responds to vivid, sensory-rich details much faster than it responds to boring or vague instructions. Every chapter we go through from here on out will show you exactly how to create these conditions on purpose, rather than just stumbling into them by accident like most people do. Now, here's the crazy part. The reason subconscious reprogramming feels so incredibly fast once it actually starts working is that you aren't fighting against an opponent anymore. You're simply providing clear, repeated, and emotionally charged directions to the part of your mind that was always going to be the boss anyway, regardless of what your conscious mind wanted to believe about being in control. The constant internal fight and the grinding effort finally stop. What takes its place is something that feels much more like training. It's the exact same kind of training that takes a clumsy first attempt at a new skill and turns it into a smooth automatic habit. Your subconscious has been training itself on your old baggage for years. It is fully capable of training on brand new material just as easily, the very moment you understand how to actually speak its language. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Chapter 2. Where your programs came from. Every single program currently running in the back of your mind had to be installed by someone at some specific point in your life. None of this happened by accident or for no reason. Every belief you have about your own self-worth, your abilities, your safety, and your place in this world was built from specific experiences, repeated messages, and emotional events that your developing nervous system just soaked up and labeled as the truth. If you're finding this helpful so far, hit subscribe and tap that notification bell so you don't miss the next steps in this process. This programming is true for the helpful parts of your personality, just as much as the parts that hold you back. The natural confidence that some people carry into a room was installed in their minds the exact same way that someone else's deep self-doubt was installed. Neither person actually chose their own installation. Both of them are simply running the software that their early environment handed them, and they do it with a level of accuracy that would be impressive if it wasn't so often working against them. But wait until you hear this. Between the time you were born and roughly age 7, your brain was operating mostly in very slow brainwave states known as theta and delta. These are the exact same states that adults experience during deep hypnosis or intense meditation. This isn't just a random coincidence. It means that for the first several years of your life, your brain was in a state of massive suggestibility almost all the time. Whatever was happening in the world around you, whether it was the words people said, the tone of their voices, the overall emotional vibe of your home, or the way your parents acted, it all got absorbed directly into your subconscious mind. It happened with almost no filtering because the critical part of your conscious mind hadn't fully grown yet. You were, scientifically speaking, in a near constant hypnotic state, downloading the entire operating system that would run the rest of your life unless you eventually decided to go back and fix it. And the main way these early programs became permanent was through simple repetition. A single mean comment from a parent might not create a lifelong belief, but a message that's repeated over and over certainly will. When that same kind of comment is repeated across hundreds of small, ordinary moments for years, it really starts to stick. Your subconscious mind views repetition as proof that something is true, even if the message is actually wrong. This is exactly why, as an adult, you might logically know an old childhood belief about not being good enough is false, but you still feel the emotional sting of it whenever you're stressed. That logical knowledge lives in your conscious mind, but the repeated emotional belief is tucked away in the subconscious. And the truth is, your subconscious doesn't just change its mind because your conscious mind disagrees with it. If you're enjoying this breakdown so far, go ahead and smash that like button. It really helps the channel out. Now here is where it gets really interesting. While repetition is one way to learn, emotional intensity is the second big way these programs get installed, and it can actually skip the need for repetition entirely. A single experience that carries a huge emotional charge, whether it's fear, shame, joy, or relief, can lock in a belief in just 1 second. This is why one public failure as a kid can make someone avoid being seen for the rest of their life, while one moment of being truly celebrated can create a lasting feeling of being capable. Your subconscious isn't counting how many times something happened. It's measuring how much it mattered emotionally at the time, and it uses that weight as the main signal to save that belief forever. But wait until you hear about this next part, because it's arguably the most overlooked. Modeling, or just watching the people around you, is the third major way these beliefs get installed. Children don't just learn from what they are told. They learn from what they see. A child who watches a parent panic over money and make decisions based on fear will grow up seeing money as something dangerous, no matter what that parent says about saving money. On the other hand, a child who sees a parent handle a fight with calm, honest talk learns that conflict is something they can survive. These models become your default settings that turn on automatically in your adult life. If you want to keep uncovering these hidden patterns, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part. On top of your family life, social and cultural programming starts to layer on as you grow up. This adds even more beliefs about what's possible for someone of your background, your gender, or your community. Everything from school and your friends to the media you consume adds to this installation. Sometimes these messages back up what you learned at home, and sometimes they clash with it. By the time you're an adult, your subconscious is running a thick layered collection of programs from dozens of different sources. Almost none of these were chosen on purpose, yet most of them feel like your personal truth rather than the installed software they actually are. Now, here's the most important part to remember. Figuring out where these programs came from isn't about blaming the people who gave them to you. Most parents and teachers were just running their own inherited programs. They were just passing along what they had been given without ever realizing there was another way to live. The point here isn't to judge, it's to diagnose the situation. You can't rewrite a system, if you don't understand how it was built in the first place. Knowing the origin tells you exactly what kind of methods actually work on your mind. Which of these sources do you think had the biggest impact on you? Drop it in the comments below. Think about this. You aren't stuck with the brain you were born with, or even the one your environment gave you. If your mind was programmed through repetition, you can literally rewrite it using that same exact tool. If a heavy emotional event created a mental block, a new, powerful experience can start to replace it. If you learned how to act by watching others, finding new role models gives your subconscious a better map to follow. The most life-changing thing to realize in this chapter is actually the simplest. If your current habits were built using specific tools, those same tools are still sitting right there for you to use as an adult. But now, you have the power of choice that you didn't have as a kid. You aren't just a passive sponge anymore, soaking up whatever your environment happens to throw at you. You are a conscious adult. You get to pick what to repeat, what emotions to lean into, and who you want to learn from. You are finally the architect of your own mind, building a life that serves you instead of just living out the one you were handed. If you're finding this helpful so far, smash that like button and let me know you're with me. But here is the crazy part. There is a specific window that opens twice every single day, and it doesn't take any effort at all to find. During this time, your subconscious mind is way more open to new ideas than it is during the rest of the day. This window happens in those quiet, hazy minutes, right before you fall asleep, and again, right after you wake up, before you're fully alert. Science calls these the hypnagogic and hypnopompic states. In these moments, your brain waves actually shift. They move from the fast, busy beta waves of your normal day into the slower alpha and theta waves. These are the same waves linked to deep relaxation, meditation, and even clinical hypnosis. This isn't just a small technical detail. It's one of the most important things you will ever learn, because it tells you exactly when the door to your subconscious is standing wide open. Make sure to hit subscribe and tap that bell so you don't miss the next step in this process. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. During your normal day, your brain is mostly in a beta wave state, which means your inner critic is fully awake. Think of this critic like a security guard at a gate. It looks at every new thought and compares it to what you already believe. If a new thought doesn't fit your old story, the guard blocks it. This is usually helpful because it keeps you from believing total nonsense. But it also means that when you try to tell yourself something new and positive during a busy day, it has to fight that guard every single time. That is exactly why positive affirmations often fail to change anything when you're just saying them while you're distracted. The guard is just doing its job, keeping out the very change you're trying to bring in. But here's the secret. In those alpha and theta states, that security guard finally goes on break. This is the same neurological trick that allows hypnotists to suggest new ideas that bypass your usual resistance. It's also why your childhood memories and habits are so hard to break. They were installed when you were young, and your guard wasn't even on duty yet. You don't need a professional to get into this state, though. You go there naturally every single night as you drift off, and every morning as you wake up. The real tragedy when it comes to changing your life is that almost everyone wastes these windows by filling them with the wrong things, like stress, bad news, or social media. Think about this for a second. What if the first thing you do every morning is actually sabotaging your entire life? Most of us wake up and immediately grab our phones, flooding our highly suggestible minds with notifications, bad news, and everyone else's stress. If you're starting to realize how much this might be affecting you, smash that like button so I know you're with me. Instead of letting the world take over, you have to reclaim the hypnopompic window. These are those precious moments right after you wake up when your brain is wide open, before you engage with anything from the outside. Those first few minutes should be filled with things you choose on purpose. This could be a specific visualization of your goals, a phrase you repeat with deep emotion, or a mental image of the version of yourself you are currently building. This isn't just some minor life hack either. Research on how we learn shows that information we encounter right around sleep gets special treatment from our brains. But here's the crazy part. What you put in your mind during these windows is far more likely to become a lasting belief than anything you learn during a normal, busy afternoon. To really make this work, you have to apply that same discipline to the end of your day during the hypnagogic window. This is the time right before you fall asleep. Instead of letting your mind wander into worries, frustrations, or old arguments, you can fill this space with focused and emotional thoughts. You can review your day with genuine appreciation, visualize a successful outcome for a project you're working on, or state who you are with total conviction. If you're finding these tips helpful, make sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a chance to upgrade your mindset. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this is exactly where most people get affirmations completely wrong. Just repeating a flat, robotic phrase over and over doesn't do much because it has no emotional spark. Your subconscious doesn't care about words. It responds to real feelings and vivid sensory details. It needs to hear things in the present tense, as if they are already your reality. There is a massive difference between saying, "I want to be confident" in a bored voice, and actually feeling that heat and strength of confidence in your body while you remember a specific moment of success. One of these gets ignored, but the other lands deep inside your mind. This is why this practice can produce results that feel unsettlingly fast. You aren't fighting against your own mental gatekeeper twice a day anymore. Instead, you are simply walking through the door while it is already standing wide open for you. The cumulative effect of just a few minutes of this every day starts to compound until you've bypassed the slow grind of conscious effort entirely. You can actually see a massive shift in your mood and confidence in just a few days, rather than the months it usually takes to change a habit. That is exactly what happens when you work at the root level, where lasting change is actually programmed. If you're finding this helpful, go ahead and smash that like button. Building this practice doesn't require some long, complicated ritual or a massive time commitment. All it takes is 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning and the end of your day. You just have to protect those few minutes from your phone, your screens, and all that leftover stress from your day. But here is the crazy part. We will cover the specific language and structures you need for the best results in the next few sections. For now, understand this. The door to your subconscious opens every single day on a predictable schedule. You don't need any special skills to get inside. The real question is what you choose to carry with you when you walk through it. Are you going to keep handing that opportunity over to your phone? Or are you finally going to claim that time to rebuild your own mind? Now, this is where it gets interesting. Most of the time when people try to use self-talk or affirmations, they fail. It isn't because the idea is wrong, but because the language they use is a total mismatch for how the subconscious brain processes information. The subconscious doesn't understand no or not the same way your logical mind does. If you're enjoying this, make sure to hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part. When you tell yourself, I'm not going to be anxious, your subconscious has to create a mental image of anxiety just to understand the sentence before it can even try to cancel it out. Research on thought suppression shows this actually makes the thing you're trying to avoid feel even more important. It's like being told, don't think of a white bear. You immediately see one. When you give your subconscious negative instructions, you are literally working against how your brain is wired. But here's the secret. Your subconscious responds much better to direct, positive statements. Instead of saying, I am not going to be anxious, try telling yourself, I am calm and prepared. There is no knot to untangle and no bad image to build first. This shift, moving from what you don't want to what you do want, is a practical change you can make starting today. It applies to every part of your life, from your health and your money to your relationships and your creative work. Which area do you want to change first? Drop a comment below. Your subconscious is always building toward whatever image you give it. Now, you won't believe how many people mess this up. Using the present tense is the second most important rule for talking to your inner mind. When you say, I will be confident, you are telling your subconscious to keep that goal in the future. Because your subconscious is extremely literal. It hears those words and decides that success is something that should always stay just out of reach, waiting for a tomorrow that never actually shows up. When you repeat a future tense goal for years, you're actually building a wall between your current life and your dreams. You're telling your inner mind that success is something that belongs in the future, which means it stays out of reach forever. But here is the secret. Your subconscious only lives in the now. It doesn't understand later. And that's why you have to switch to present tense language. Instead of saying, I will be brave, you should say, I am confident. Or, I am becoming the person who handles this with ease. This shifts your desired state into the present moment, which is the only time frame your subconscious actually recognizes. If you're enjoying these tips so far, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Specificity matters way more than you might think. Most people are too vague. They say things like, I want a better life, or I want to be rich. But those statements give your subconscious nothing to aim for. Vague goals produce vague results. The thing is, when you give your mind a crystal clear target, including sensory details about what that outcome looks, sounds, and feels like, it finally has an actual map to follow. This is the same logic used in high-level performance psychology. Study after study shows that people with specific, vivid goals get much better results than those with fuzzy dreams, even when they put in the exact same amount of effort. Your subconscious isn't inspired by big abstract concepts. It is triggered by the details. But here is the crazy part that most people miss. You need an emotional charge. This is the third and most vital piece of the puzzle, yet it's usually left out of basic affirmation practices. If you just repeat a sentence in a flat, bored voice, your subconscious just ignores it. It sees those words as low-priority background noise, just like the thousands of other boring things you hear every day. But when you say those words, while truly feeling the emotion behind them, your brain sits up and takes notice. Even if you have to fake that feeling or remember a time you felt successful in the past, that emotional spark makes the information a high priority. Think about how great actors can actually change their heart rate or start shaking just by imagining a sad or scary situation. Their subconscious can't tell the difference between a vivid imagination and reality. This is exactly how you reprogram your mind. If you want more deep dives like this, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next video. To make this even more powerful, you need to add sensory richness. This gives your subconscious way more data to work with than just language. Saying "I am successful" is okay, but it's nowhere near as powerful as visualizing a specific scene. Imagine yourself standing in a specific room, hearing the respect in a colleague's voice, and feeling the physical weight lifting off your shoulders because you're so capable. The more senses you use, sight, sound, touch, and even smell or taste where it fits, the more your subconscious treats the experience as a real event rather than a fantasy. It starts to encode this new vision as actual evidence for a new belief system. But it gets even wilder when we look at how the brain starts to physically change based on these inputs. Ever wonder why you can force yourself to do something for a week, but then you just stop? It's because you're likely using the wrong language to talk to your brain. Identity-level language is what creates the deepest and most lasting changes, because it works on the level your subconscious sees as the most basic truth about you. There is a massive difference between saying, "I'm going to try to exercise more," and "I am a person who takes care of my body." The first one describes a difficult task you're trying to add to an old version of yourself. The second describes a core part of who you are, which makes the right behavior happen naturally without needing to fight yourself every day. If you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button. It really helps us out. Research on identity-based habits shows that people who frame things this way are much more consistent over time because they aren't forcing a new habit onto a resistant self. It's just a natural expression of who they already are. But here's the crazy part. When you combine positive framing, the present tense, specific details, and deep emotion, you turn your inner thoughts into a high-speed tool for rewriting your mind. This is the secret behind why some people get life-changing results from affirmations, while others see absolutely nothing after months of trying. It was never about whether affirmations work or not. It was always about whether the language you used was a dialect your subconscious could actually understand and process. Every section from here on will build on this foundation so you can apply it to any part of your life you want to change. Now, this is where things get even more interesting. Let's look at Chapter 5, Visualization as Direct Programming. Many people dismiss visualization as just wishful thinking, because they don't know what's happening at a neurological level. That's a huge mistake, especially considering how much science supports it. By the way, hit subscribe and tap that bell so you don't miss our next video. Brain imaging shows that when you vividly imagine an action, it triggers the same neural pathways as physically doing it. This isn't a metaphor. It's a real, measurable overlap in brain activity. That's why elite athletes use mental rehearsal as a standard part of their training. It's not a nice to have. It's a performance tool with documented results. You won't believe what happens when you test this in a lab. A famous study compared 3 groups practicing basketball free throws. One practiced physically, one only visualized, and one did nothing. The results were clear. The group that only visualized improved way more than those who did nothing. Even better, combining physical and mental practice got the best results of all. The reason is simple. Your brain activates the same circuits whether you're on the court or just in your head. Once you understand this neural overlap, you can use it to change anything. Think of your brain as a high-powered computer that can't actually tell the difference between a high-definition movie and a live event. When you visualize a movement or a situation with enough detail, you aren't just doing a poetic warm-up. You're performing genuine practice. Your brain is literally strengthening the neural pathways needed to succeed in the real world. But this doesn't just apply to sports or physical skills. It also shapes your emotional and behavioral habits through that same exact mechanism. If you're finding this helpful so far, definitely smash that like button and tell me what you think in the comments. When you vividly imagine yourself staying calm and clear-headed in a situation that usually makes you panic, you aren't just wishing for a better outcome. You are actively rehearsing a new neural pathway for calmness. You're making that calm path stronger than the panic path that used to be your default setting. This is actually the science behind exposure therapy, which is a proven clinical method. In that therapy, people are slowly exposed to things they fear while staying relaxed to rewire their brain's fear response. You're doing the same structural work here, but you're doing it proactively to build the life you want instead of just reacting to your old fears. But here's the crazy part. You have to be incredibly specific if you want this to work. Just like we talked about how vague language ruins your goals, vague visualization produces vague results. If you just imagine a general, fuzzy feeling of success, your subconscious has nothing to lock onto. To make it work, you need a richly detailed template. You have to see the specific physical surroundings, hear the exact sounds, and notice the facial expressions of the people around you. You even need to feel the physical sensations in your own body, like the temperature of the air or the clothes on your skin. When you do this, you are basically handing your subconscious a memory of the future. Because it's so detailed, your brain treats it with the same weight as a real memory of something that actually happened. If you're ready to start building those future memories, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Now, this is where it gets even more interesting. Emotional engagement is the secret sauce that turns a simple daydream into an active reprogramming session. It is totally possible to imagine a scene while feeling completely flat and bored, but that won't change anything. You can't just watch a movie of yourself from a distance like a stranger. To get real results, You have to step fully inside the experience. You need to see everything through your own eyes and actively generate the actual feelings of pride, relief, or joy in your chest. The difference between watching yourself win and actually feeling what it's like to win is the difference between simple entertainment and actual subconscious instruction. To make this practice even more intense, you should use the brainwave windows we mentioned earlier. The best times to do this are in the hypnagogic state right before you fall asleep, or the hypnopompic state just as you're waking up. In these relaxed moments, your subconscious is wide open and highly receptive to new information. By visualizing during these specific windows, you take full advantage of the neural overlap between imagination and reality, making your mental practice more powerful than ever before. Think about this. Spending just 5 to 10 minutes in those special brainwave windows, using the deep focus and emotion we just talked about, can give you results that seem way bigger than the effort you put in. It works because that specific timing allows the information to be coded deep into your subconscious mind. If you're enjoying these insights so far, definitely hit that like button to help more people find this. Now, there is a very specific technique called the rehearsal of recovery that most people completely overlook, and it's a total game changer. Instead of just dreaming about everything going perfectly and effortlessly, which can sometimes feel so fake that your brain rejects it, you should visualize yourself hitting a snag. Imagine a setback or a difficult moment within your goal, and then see yourself responding with the calm, capable strength of the person you are becoming. This doesn't just build a pretty picture of success, it builds a real pathway in your brain for staying resilient under pressure. That kind of mental training is much more durable and useful than just imagining a path that is perfectly smooth and unrealistic. But here is where it gets really interesting. The power of doing this consistently starts to stack up in ways that will totally surprise you. A single session of vivid visualization might give you a small boost in confidence, but doing it every day creates a massive shift. When you pair daily practice with the right brainwave timing and deep emotional engagement, you start to see your actual behavior change in just a few days. You aren't waiting for life to prove a new reality to you. You are directly building that reality inside your own mind over and over until your subconscious literally has no way to tell the difference between your imagination and the truth. To make sure you don't miss any of these life-changing steps, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you're always in the loop. Chapter 6. Repetition that actually sticks. Repetition is the main way your subconscious separates the signal from the noise. It treats ideas it hears all the time as being more important and more likely to be true than something it only hears once. This is the exact reason why advertising is so powerful and why propaganda has worked throughout history. It's also why a single mean comment repeated during your childhood can turn into a lifelong belief, even if it was never true to begin with. Now, here's the crazy part about how your brain handles information. Your subconscious is basically a statistical engine. It looks at how often it receives an input as the main sign of how reliable that input is. It doesn't even care if the information is actually true. It just cares how often it shows up. Once you understand this, you can start using repetition as a tool of your own choice rather than just letting your environment shout random messages at you. Just remember that not all repetition is created equal. Simply saying a phrase over and over while your mind wanders is pretty weak. You need engaged repetition, where you stay totally focused on the meaning and the feeling of what you are saying. So, which part of this technique are you going to try first? Drop a comment and let me know. The latest research on how we learn shows that how deeply you process information is what really matters. It's not just about how many times you repeat a phrase. It's about how much you really feel it and think about it in the moment. Doing something 10 times with your full focus and real emotion is going to work way better than doing it 100 times while your mind is wandering off. If you're finding these tips helpful so far, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. There's also a big concept called spaced repetition. Basically, if you review information at bigger and bigger intervals, it stays in your brain much longer than if you just try to cram it all in at once. When you apply this to changing your mindset, it means that a quick, honest, daily practice that you keep up for weeks is going to work much better than one super intense session that you never do again. Your subconscious mind loves consistency. It sees a habit that shows up every day as a signal that the information is actually important. It looks for patterns that stay the same across different moods and situations, which feels way more real to your brain than a one-time burst of energy. But here is where things get even more interesting. You can actually hack your brain by changing how you repeat things. Instead of just saying a phrase in your head, try saying it out loud. That uses different parts of your brain for speaking and hearing. Then try writing it down by hand. Now you're using your fine motor skills and your eyes. When you mix these together, you're building multiple roads in your brain that all lead to the same new belief. This makes your new mindset much stronger and harder to forget than if you just thought about it silently. By the way, if you want to keep mastering your mind, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss an update. Now, you won't believe why some people actually feel worse when they try this. There is a hidden trap in repetition that we have to talk about. If you're repeating a line like, "I am confident," but deep down you're thinking, that's a total lie. You're sending mixed signals to your subconscious. This is called cognitive dissonance. If you try to force a belief that is way too far from how you actually feel, your brain might actually fight against it even harder. It feels fake. And that feeling of this isn't true becomes the thing you're actually practicing. The fix isn't to stop the practice, but to use bridging statements. These are phrases that feel true enough for your brain to accept them without a fight. Instead of saying, "I am confident," try saying, "I am becoming more confident," or "I am capable of building real confidence." Your subconscious can actually get on board with those because they don't trigger that internal argument. Using these bridges is the best way to start when you're changing a stuck belief. Which of these bridging phrases feels most helpful to you? Let me know in the comments. Think about it this way. Instead of jumping straight to a massive identity shift that your brain will just ignore because it feels like a lie, you want to use a series of small, believable steps. This lets your subconscious update slowly over time. Each new thought stays close enough to what you already believe, so your brain doesn't reject it or start an internal argument. If you keep doing this for a few weeks, your comfort zone actually moves. You can keep pushing for stronger statements until that big, originally impossible goal finally feels like the simple truth. It's like climbing a ladder instead of trying to leap onto the roof in one go. But here's where most people mess up. The environment you're in makes a huge difference. If you're practicing while you're tense, distracted, or really stressed out, you're actually fighting against yourself. Your subconscious has a gatekeeper that only opens when you're truly relaxed. That's why doing this while you're in that special brainwave window we talked about, or after a quick breathing exercise, works so much better than rushing through it between chores. Your body and mind are totally connected. So, prepping your body first makes the whole process way more effective. If you're finding these steps helpful so far, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. We have a lot more to cover that you won't want to miss. Now this is where it gets really interesting. After you stick with this for a few months, something amazing happens. You'll notice a specific shift that almost everyone who does this work describes. You won't have to try so hard to think the new way anymore. It just happens. The new belief becomes your default setting, popping up automatically, just like your old negative thoughts used to. This is the real sign that you've successfully reprogrammed your mind. People who reach this point don't feel like they're winning a hard battle. They just realize they aren't the same person who had to fight that battle in the first place. It's a quiet, surprising realization that you've changed. That brings us to a huge topic, Chapter 7, the emotional reset switch. You see, emotion isn't just a random side effect. It's actually the main tool your brain uses to lock in new patterns. If you want to change your mind, you can't just think your way through it. You have to feel it. Your subconscious sees strong emotions as a sign that something is really important. This is why scary or bad memories stick so easily, even if they only happen once. To fix this, the best methods use real positive feelings instead of just repeating boring sentences. The feeling isn't just extra fluff. It is the core of the message itself. And while happiness is great, there are other specific emotions that work even better for this kind of deep work. Wait until you hear how a simple feeling like gratitude actually changes the way your heart beats. It's way more than just a polite thank you. It's about genuine appreciation for something real and present in your life right now. Scientists have studied this extensively and found it creates changes you can actually measure in your heart rate variability. This is a key sign that your nervous system is balanced and regulated. When you're in this state, your brain becomes much more open to the deep changes we're working on. It acts as the perfect preparation, opening the door wide before the specific reprogramming work begins. If you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button. Now, let's look at feelings like pride and confidence. The secret here isn't to fake them, but to pull them from a time when you actually felt them. This is a trick used by professional actors and athletes in competitive sports, called emotional recall. You don't just think about a past win. You rebuild the memory using every sensory detail you can find. What did the air feel like on your skin? What specific sounds could you hear in that moment? You do this until that feeling of success literally comes back to life in your body, with real physical power. Once that emotion is active, it becomes potent fuel for reprogramming your capability and self-belief through visualization or affirmations. This way, You aren't trying to create a feeling from nothing. You're just waking up a feeling your body has already proven it can make. But here is the crazy part. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if your mind is full of emotional static, your new programming won't stick. Before we get into how to clear that, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss any of these steps. Negative emotions like anxiety, shame, or old grudges act like loud background noise that interferes with your progress. If you try to tell yourself you're confident while you're still carrying around shame from something else, your subconscious gets confused. The signals clash, and the new belief usually fails to take root. This is why we use an emotional reset switch as its own separate tool from the rest. You have to clear the channel first, so the new message can land clearly. This reset switch is actually a simple physical trick that uses the direct link between your breath and your nerves. When you make your exhale longer than your inhale, you trigger the part of your nervous system responsible for rest and recovery. It's a biological signal that says it's safe to be calm and receptive. Try taking just 5 slow breaths where the exhale is twice as long as the inhale. In less than a minute, your heart rate shifts, and you feel a sense of calm. It's a fast, reliable bridge that moves you from stress into the receptive state you need for this work. After the breathing, just name any leftover feelings and let them go. You don't need to analyze them. Just acknowledging them is enough to clear the path. Which of these techniques surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. It's honestly as simple as taking a moment to silently say to yourself, "I'm feeling a bit frustrated about what happened earlier." Follow that up with a few more slow, deep breaths and make a conscious choice to set that feeling aside for the duration of this practice. You're giving yourself full permission to come back to that frustration later if you really need to. But for right now, you're letting it go. If you're finding this helpful so far, definitely smash that like button. Scientists have actually studied this process, calling it emotional labeling. They found that just naming an emotion like this lowers activity in your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that acts like a threat detector. This means that simply putting a name to what you're feeling starts to weaken its hold on you before you even try to do any deep work. But here's the crazy part about how your brain actually works. Once you've cleared out those negative feelings and created a clean emotional channel, you need to intentionally bring up the specific positive emotion that fits the work you're doing. Whether that's feeling more confident, calm, worthy, or just genuinely excited, doing this primes your subconscious mind to receive your visualizations with much more impact. This specific order, resetting first, then building a positive feeling, and then using your affirmations, is exactly how your subconscious naturally processes information. Most people skip those first 2 steps and jump straight into affirmations, which is exactly why they report such lukewarm results from their practice. If you want to keep mastering your mind like this, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next lesson. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because this reset switch isn't just for when you're sitting alone in a quiet room. You can actually use it in real time during your normal day, whenever a tough emotion starts to pull you back into old habits. If you've practiced this enough during your quiet sessions, you'll find you can use that same slow breath and quick emotional label right in the middle of a stressful meeting, or when someone says something that triggers an old feeling of shame. You're literally interrupting that negative spiral and stopping it from reinforcing your old programming. This is where the technique stops being just an exercise and becomes a real skill for managing your life as it happens. Now wait until you hear this, because Chapter 8 is where we hit the real target, your identity. Every tool we've talked about becomes way more powerful when you stop focusing on a specific behavior and start focusing on who you actually are. Your subconscious organizes almost everything around your identity. Most self-help books tell you to change your actions first through willpower, hoping that eventually your identity will change too. But that's totally backward. The faster and more effective way, based on how your brain is built, is to install the new identity directly into your subconscious first. Once you do that, the new behaviors follow naturally without you having to force them, because they simply match who you believe you are. James Clear's research on habits shows that focusing on who you wish to become is much more effective than focusing on what you want to achieve. It fixes the inner conflict that usually makes change so hard. Which of these ideas hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments and let me know. Did you know your brain might actually be working against your success on purpose? Think about a person trying to get fit who still secretly thinks of themselves as unathletic. They have to use massive amounts of willpower for every single workout because their inner self-image doesn't match their actions. But then look at the person who truly identifies as someone who takes care of their body. For them, that same workout isn't a struggle at all. It's just a simple, natural part of who they are. Their brain isn't fighting them because the action matches the identity. If you've ever felt like you're your own worst enemy, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Now, your subconscious is obsessed with staying consistent. In psychology, this is called self-verification. It's the habit of searching for evidence to prove your current beliefs about yourself are right, even if those beliefs are negative or hold you back. This is exactly why some people sabotage their own success right when things are going great, or why they end up back in toxic situations they swore they'd leave. Your brain isn't being mean. It's just trying to keep your life and your identity in sync. But here is the crazy part. Once you realize this, you can turn it into your biggest advantage. If your brain wants your reality to match your identity, you just have to give it a new identity to follow. By using the visualization, repetition, and emotional tools we've been discussing, you can literally reprogram your mind. Suddenly, your subconscious starts working to prove this new identity is true. It will even start interpreting the world around you in ways that support the new you instead of the old one. This is why people say things just fall into place after they do genuine inner work. It's not magic. It's just your psychology shifting gears. By the way, if you're finding this helpful, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a chance to upgrade your mindset. Now, this is where it gets interesting. When you're building this new identity, you have to be very careful with your words. A simple statement like, "I am disciplined," is a good start, but it's a little too thin for the brain to grab onto. You want something more vivid and meaningful. Try saying, "I am someone who follows through on my word, even when it's inconvenient." That gives your subconscious a clear, specific rule to organize your behavior around, to make it stick, keep it in the present tense, and fill it with real emotion. But you won't believe what the real secret is. It's evidence collection. You have to spend your day looking for tiny moments that prove your new identity is real. Your subconscious isn't just listening to you during your morning practice. It's watching how you act all day long to see if you're telling the truth. It responds to the stack of evidence you feed it during your ordinary life. Wait until you hear this. Simply noticing those tiny moments when you act like your new self is the fastest way to rewrite your brain. When you stop to realize you just acted like the person you want to be, you're giving your subconscious the exact proof it needs to update its model of who you are. If you're finding this helpful so far, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Now, there is a specific turning point that happens way faster than most people expect. It's the moment when your new identity stops feeling like hard work and starts feeling like it's just your natural reality. This happens when you've stacked up enough evidence, both from your imagination, through visualization, and from your real-life actions, that your brain finally accepts it as the new default. But here's the crazy part. Once you cross that line, you don't even have to try anymore. Your brain just operates from this new version of you automatically. It's just like how your old limited self used to feel totally normal before you started this work. Choosing to focus on your identity instead of just trying to change one habit at a time is the smartest move you can make. It's like a domino effect that hits every part of your life. When you truly believe you are worthy and capable, it doesn't just fix one habit. It changes how you negotiate, how you handle a no, how you show up in your relationships, and how you jump on new opportunities. Everything flows from that same underlying self-concept. Make sure you hit subscribe and tap that bell so you don't miss the next part of this breakdown. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. We're moving into Chapter 9, which is all about getting rid of the old programs that don't serve you anymore. Installing new beliefs is only half the battle. If you try to put a new positive thought on top of a deep old negative one, you're going to run into a lot of internal friction. It's like running new software on a computer, bogged down by a buggy, old operating system in the background. It's going to waste your energy and cause the whole system to crash when the two programs collide. To really make this change stick, you have to go through a process of finding and deleting those old programs that are fighting against the new you. You might be wondering how to find these hidden programs. You start by paying attention to the patterns that keep showing up. Things like self-sabotage, resistance, or getting way too emotional about small things. For example, if you find yourself always charging too little for your work, no matter the job or context, that's a huge clue. It points to a deep belief about your worth or what you deserve that is running beneath the surface. Or maybe you get super anxious whenever you are being evaluated, regardless of the situation. That points toward an older program related to your safety and visibility. These patterns aren't character flaws to be ashamed of. They are just the visible surface evidence of subconscious programs that were once protective in a specific context. They worked for you once, but they have now outlived their usefulness without being updated. Which one of these patterns surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below. Now, once you've identified a specific program that's holding you back, you need to trace it back to where it started. Think back to those tools we discussed earlier, things like repetition, intense emotions, and the people you modeled your behavior after. Usually this clarifies exactly what that program was trying to protect you from in the first place. For example, if you feel a huge wave of anxiety whenever people look at you, it might trace back to a time you were bullied at school or a home life where being noticed meant getting in trouble. But here is the crazy part. This exercise isn't about blaming your parents or living in the past forever. It's about gathering the right info so you understand what the program was trying to achieve. Programs that were built to protect you react differently to change than programs that are just based on wrong information. Knowing which one you're dealing with is the secret to clearing it for good. If you're finding this helpful so far, smash that like button right now. For those programs that started as a way to keep you safe, there's a step most self-help books completely skip. You have to internally acknowledge that the program actually served a real purpose when it was created. If you developed a habit of staying small and hidden because your childhood felt dangerous, that wasn't a mistake. It was a brilliant way to survive. When you realize this, instead of calling the habit stupid or wrong, you stop the internal tug of war. Your subconscious stops fighting you because it doesn't feel like it's being attacked. Now this is where it gets interesting. You can use a technique called conscious updating. This is where you talk directly to that old program and give it the information it didn't have years ago. You don't just repeat words like a robot. You say them with real, deep feeling. You tell yourself, that situation back then was real, and my reaction made sense at the time. But I am safe now, and I don't need to stay small to stay protected anymore. This works because you aren't just fighting the old logic. You're giving your brain a better option. But you won't believe what happens next. Sometimes your mind is ready to let go, but your body isn't. This is where somatic release comes in. This is the practice of actually feeling the physical sensations in your body, rather than just thinking about them. Science tells us that emotional patterns are often stored as tension in our muscles or changes in our breathing. To really clear these out, you might need to use deep breaths or gentle movement to let that energy move through you. Hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into these techniques. Finally, we have to talk about forgiveness. This isn't just a spiritual idea. It's a practical tool for your brain. When you hold on to resentment, you are basically forcing your subconscious to replay the original trauma over and over again. Every time you get angry at someone from your past, you are reinforcing the very program you're trying to delete. Forgiveness is how you finally break that loop. Every time you relive an old grudge with real anger or hurt, you're basically hitting the save button on that bad programming. Instead of clearing it out, you're making it stronger. If you're finding this helpful, go ahead and smash that like button. Now, real forgiveness doesn't mean you have to excuse someone's harmful behavior. It just means you are making a conscious choice to stop that internal replay that keeps the emotional wound wide open. When you stop that loop, you stop feeding the old program, allowing it to naturally weaken over time. This works best when you pair it with the new, updated habits we've been discussing. But here's the thing you need to understand. Clearing out these old patterns is rarely a single dramatic moment. Even though movies show people having instant breakthroughs, in the real world, it's a gradual loosening. The old program's grip gets weaker with every cycle of acknowledging the feeling, updating your thoughts, releasing tension in your body, and forgiveness. At the same time, you are installing much better ways of thinking. When you combine clearing out what doesn't serve you with building what actually does, you start to see a massive shift. People who do this work often say they feel like a brand new person. It's not that their fundamental nature changed, but the operating system running underneath their personality was finally intentionally updated. Chapter 10. Building the daily practice that compounds. Every technique in this book works significantly better as a consistent daily habit than as a random, intense session you only do when you're in a crisis or feeling extra motivated. If you're enjoying this, hit subscribe and tap that notification bell so you don't miss the next step. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about discipline. It's about how your subconscious mind responds to input over time. It values a steady, repeated signal much more than a short burst of intensity. It's exactly like exercise. Consistent, moderate movement builds more long-term fitness than one massive, exhausting workout, followed by weeks of doing nothing. Choosing to build a sustainable daily routine rather than relying on occasional motivation is the structural choice that determines if these techniques give you a temporary mood lift or a permanent reorganization of how your subconscious mind operates. The most effective daily practice focuses on two brainwave windows: the minutes right after you wake up and the minutes just before you go to sleep. In these moments, your brain has a heightened receptivity that makes even a short practice way more powerful than during the busy, analytical hours of the day. But wait until you hear how simple this can be. A full morning practice can take as little as 5 minutes. You just need a few deep breaths to get relaxed, a specific identity statement you say with real feeling, and a quick, clear visualization of your day going exactly how you want it to. This shortness is a feature, not a limitation. A brief practice you do every day is much more powerful than a long, boring one that you skip when you're busy. Your evening practice then works as a partner to this, using your sleep to lock in whatever you put in your mind right before bed. Which part of this routine surprised you most? Drop a comment and let me know. Instead of doing a long, boring recap of every single thing that happened in your day, just do a quick review that focuses on the specific moments that prove you're becoming the person you want to be. This tells your brain exactly what to focus on right before you go to sleep, which is when your mind starts deep processing all that information. You can follow this up with the same identity statement and visualization you used when you woke up. The trick is to change the mental pictures slightly so you don't get bored and start daydreaming, but keep the main message the same, so you're reinforcing that same program every single night. By the way, if you're finding this helpful so far, smash that like button so I know you're with me. Now, while the daily stuff is fast, you also need a weekly session that's a bit longer and more thoughtful. This gives you a chance to be totally honest with yourself, which keeps your practice from becoming just empty words that don't actually lead to progress. During this weekly check-in, look back at which of your old habits popped up and what specific situations triggered them. But also, look for any new ways you responded, no matter how small those changes might seem. This isn't about being mean to yourself or judging your mistakes. It's just about gathering data so you can fix your daily routine. You can see which identity statements are actually working and which ones might need to be changed or given more feeling to really sink in. But here's the crazy part about tracking your results. You have to look for feelings and quality rather than just numbers. If you're enjoying this, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. The most important changes usually show up as tiny shifts in how fast you react to things, or how easy it feels to handle a situation that used to be hard. You might even notice your random thoughts during the day starting to change on their own. A great habit is to just jot down any time an old reaction didn't happen, or maybe it just wasn't as intense as it used to be. These little wins are the real proof that your brain is actually shifting, and they usually happen way before anyone else notices a big change in your life. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Consistency is way more important than how hard you push yourself. Your daily sessions need to be easy enough that you can actually do them, even on your busiest, most stressful days. Don't build a routine for a perfect version of yourself that doesn't exist in the real world. Doing a 5-minute practice every single day for months is going to create way more lasting change than trying to do 30 minutes for a week and then quitting because you got overwhelmed. Build the habit at a small, easy scale first. Only once it feels totally automatic should you try to make it longer. This stops you from getting super excited at first and then giving up completely when things get tough. But wait until you hear this. You can actually make this work even faster by sprinkling tiny moments of practice throughout your whole day. You don't have to stick to just morning and night. Take a few slow breaths and say your identity statement before you walk into a tough meeting, or do a quick mental visualization while you're standing in line for coffee. These micro practices use up those little pockets of wasted time to hammer home the same message you're working on in your main sessions. They don't have to be fancy or complicated to work wonders, but there's one more secret to making these habits stick that most people completely overlook. The real power of these tiny moments isn't about how long they last, but how often you do them. Think about it. Your subconscious mind doesn't just clock out when you finish a formal session. It's watching you all day long, taking notes on every little thing you do. This is exactly why the results can feel like they're happening on fast forward once you really get into a solid routine. If you're finding this helpful so far, do me a quick favor and smash that like button. It really helps the channel out. Every single day you show up with focus and real emotion. You're basically handing your brain a new piece of evidence. You're proving that this new version of you is the real deal, while at the same time, you're starving those old, annoying habits of the attention they used to survive. Slowly but surely, the gap between who you used to be and who you're becoming starts to close. At first, you might not even notice it's happening, but then suddenly you hit a tipping point. The new way of thinking just becomes your automatic default setting. It might feel like magic, but it's actually just pure mechanics. You're finally using the gears in your head the way they were meant to be used, steering your life in a direction you actually chose instead of letting old, dusty programming run the show. But here's the crazy part. Right when you think you've got it all figured out, something happens that stops most people dead in their tracks. Let's talk about resistance. When things start getting tough or uncomfortable, most people think they're failing. But it's actually the opposite. Resistance is usually a sign that you're finally starting to win. It pops up because your new habits are finally starting to challenge the old ones that have been running your life for years. If you don't realize this ahead of time, you might think that techniques aren't working and just give up right when you shouldn't. And that is a huge mistake because you're likely right on the edge of a massive breakthrough. By the way, if you want to make sure you don't miss the next part of this series, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you're always in the loop. Resistance isn't a wall, it's just information. One of the weirdest ways it shows up is when the very thing you're trying to change suddenly gets worse for a little bit. Imagine you're working on being more confident and calm. You might find that in the first week or two of practice, you're actually feeling more anxious than usual. This is what experts call a backlash effect, and it makes perfect sense when you look at how your brain works. Your old program has been the boss for a long time, and it's not going to give up its power without a fight. It sees your new thoughts as a genuine threat and starts asserting itself louder just to stay in control. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The worst thing you can do when this happens is get frustrated or quit. You don't need to fight fire with fire or use extra force. Instead, you just have to stay the course with a calm, steady hand. You need to acknowledge that the resistance is there, but don't let it knock you off balance or make you doubt yourself. A really helpful way to think about it is to tell yourself, this resistance is just proof that the old program is feeling the heat, and I'm going to keep moving forward anyway. It's all about staying consistent while the dust settles. Which part of this has been the most surprising for you so far? Drop a comment below and let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Looking at it this way changes everything. Instead of seeing resistance as proof that you're failing, try seeing it as proof that you're actually winning. It's a sign that your work is finally hitting that deep level where real, permanent change starts to happen. Most people who just keep showing up without making a big deal out of it or getting frustrated notice that this pushback starts to fade away after about 1 to 3 weeks. Eventually, that annoying friction disappears, and the new way of doing things starts to feel way more natural and easier to maintain than the old habits ever were. But here's the crazy part about what happens inside your head during this process. You might start feeling a weird kind of skepticism or even a bit of cynicism about the whole practice. You'll hear a small voice in your mind telling you that this is all just wishful thinking, that nothing is really changing under the surface, or that the whole thing is just plain silly and not worth your time. Believe it or not, this skeptical voice usually gets louder right when the practice is actually starting to work. Your conscious mind acts like a strict gatekeeper, and it gets extra defensive when it senses that something totally new and unfamiliar is taking over your life. If you can recognize this pattern for what it is, you can just watch those thoughts with a bit of curiosity instead of taking them as the absolute truth. You don't need to fight these thoughts or win an argument against them. Just acknowledge they are there and keep going anyway. Your subconscious cares way more about what you do than what you think during an internal debate. If you're finding these tips helpful for your own journey, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss out on our next deep dive into mastering your mind. Now, this next part is where things get really tricky with the people around you. The third type of resistance comes from your friends, family, or coworkers who might respond badly to your early signs of growth. When you start to change, the people who know you best might not like it at first. They might doubt you, start more arguments, or unconsciously try to pull you back into your old, familiar habits. Most of the time, they aren't trying to be mean or hold you back on purpose. It's just that every social group is like a little system, and when one part of that system changes, it makes everyone else feel a bit uncomfortable and off balance. They've built their relationship with the old version of you, and the new version feels unpredictable to them. Handling this takes a lot of patience and the kind of emotional control we talked about earlier. It's usually not a good idea to demand that everyone celebrate your progress right away. They can't see the internal shift yet. They need to see you stay consistent over a long period before they really believe it. Wait until you hear why the smartest move you can make right now is to just keep doing the inner work quietly. Instead of making big announcements, let your new behavior build up its own evidence over the next few months, and trust that real change will eventually be impossible for others to ignore. Even if people are skeptical at first, or they subconsciously fight against the new you because it messes with the old routines they're used to, stay the course. If you're enjoying this so far, smash that like button and tell me in the comments if you've ever felt people trying to pull you back into your old self. But here's the crazy part. That resistance you're feeling from others and yourself is actually a good sign. It's not a wall stopping you from reprogramming your mind. It's a necessary part of the whole process. It's actually proof that real change is happening, not that you're failing. The people who truly succeed at this aren't the ones who have a smooth ride with no pushback. They're the ones who see resistance for what it really is. Instead of panicking or giving up, they just keep practicing with a steady hand. They trust the process enough to keep showing up day after day until that resistance just fades away like an old habit that's finally been deleted. Chapter 12. The person you are becoming. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Hit subscribe and tap the bell right now so you don't miss how this all comes together in the next few parts. Everything we've talked about leads to one radical idea. The version of you that exists today is not fixed. You're simply the current result of software that was installed in your mind without you even realizing it. This program runs automatically under the surface, controlling your habits, your relationships, and what you think is possible way more than you might think. But wait until you hear why this is actually great news. Once you understand this, it's the most freeing discovery you can ever make. If you've spent years feeling stuck in cycles that didn't make sense, now you know why. Those weren't permanent personality traits. They were just programs installed by specific triggers. And because they were installed using specific steps, you can use those same steps to rewrite and rebuild them from the ground up. You won't believe how much faster things move once you stop fighting yourself and start working with your brain's natural systems. When I talk about speed in this book, I'm not just using hype or marketing talk. It's a real reflection of how your subconscious actually processes information when you're focused and emotionally engaged. People who have spent years trying to change using only willpower are usually shocked at how different it feels once they use the brainwave windows. By using clear language, vivid pictures in your mind, and real feelings every single day, you're finally talking to the part of the brain that actually runs the show. This isn't some magic shortcut. It's just that, for the first time, you're aiming your effort at the system responsible for your automatic behavior, rather than your conscious mind, which is actually much weaker. The new identity you're building isn't just an act or a performance layered on top of the old you. In a literal neurological way, it is becoming the new default setting for your nervous system. It's becoming the pattern that happens automatically, rather than something you have to force yourself to do. Which part of this new identity are you most excited to step into? Drop it in the comments and share this with a friend. This difference is actually huge for how your life feels once the change really sticks. But wait until you hear this. It's not about using willpower to fight bad habits anymore. Instead, it feels like you've just become a totally different person. The new, better way of acting becomes just as normal and easy as your old, bad habits were. If you're finding this helpful, go ahead and hit that like button. Now, it's important to realize that the work we've been talking about doesn't just stop at a finish line. There isn't some final destination where you're done. That's not a failure or a sign that you're incomplete. Your subconscious mind keeps soaking up new programming your whole life. Every big experience and every habit you repeat shapes who you are. This means that taking charge of your mind isn't just a quick fix to be abandoned. It's an ongoing relationship with yourself that you can keep deepening for as long as you want to keep growing. There is a very specific way of living that opens up once you really start using these tools. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't felt it yet, but once it starts happening to you, you'll know exactly what I mean. But here's the crazy part. You won't be surprised by your own self-sabotage anymore, because you finally understand the why behind it. It's no longer a mystery. Imagine facing a really tough situation and noticing that the old panic you used to feel just didn't show up. You feel a quiet sense of pride because you stayed calm. You start chasing big goals, not because you're forcing yourself, but because it feels like the most natural thing in the world. It's just who you are now. If you want to keep leveling up your mindset, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next part of this journey. Now, this is where it gets interesting. With this new power comes a real responsibility that we need to talk about. Once you truly get that you can reprogram your own mind, you can't hide behind the old excuse of "that's just my personality" anymore. You can't pretend your patterns are unchangeable. In some moments, this might actually feel like a bit of a loss. You're losing the safety of an old excuse that protected you from having to try. But honestly, it's a trade you definitely want to make. What you get in return is something way more valuable. Real control over the engine that has been running your life. Now, you get to steer that engine toward the person you actually want to be, instead of just letting it run on autopilot toward whatever your early programming pointed you at. Everything we've talked about, the brainwave states, the specific words, the vivid pictures, the repetition, the emotional connection, clearing out old junk, and even how you deal with resistance. These are all just tools. But even the best tools need a hand to use them. That hand is yours. It's your mind being rewritten. The life that comes from all this work, built brick by brick and one real emotion at a time, is the life you are actively making for yourself. Which part of this process surprised you most? Drop a comment below and let me know. You can either take charge right now or just let your old dusty habits keep running your life on autopilot. But here's the thing. What happens next is totally up to you and how you use what you've just learned. See? Just knowing this stuff doesn't change a single thing. It's the daily habits and the real emotions you put into it that count. If you're ready for that change, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. This process starts tonight, right before you sleep, and again tomorrow, the second you wake up. Now here is the crazy part. The person you are becoming isn't waiting in the future. They are being built right now by what you repeat, what you visualize, your new identity, and which old programs you finally release. The door has always been wide open. Now you finally have the key to walk through it. Which part of this journey hits home for you? Let me know below and share this now.